3 summers ago, I stopped feeding a strip of my back lawn. No nitrogen. Nothing. By August, that strip was greener than every other section I was still babying with fertilizer. That wasn't luck. I'd seeded one plant into that strip on purpose. The same plant every groundskeeper in this country used for 50 straight years before the lawn chemical industry decided to turn it into public enemy number 1. After the war, they built a weed killer that couldn't spare it. So instead of fixing the spray, they rebranded the plant. And it worked so well that most people watching this have never even heard the real story. I'm going to show you exactly what that plant is, how it feeds your grass for free, and the precise soil temperature you overseed it at so it actually takes. Don't skip that part. The timing is the whole game, and it was never printed on the bag. I'll be straight with you. This isn't a hunch. It's documented. And the story starts with a chemical, not a plant. In 1947, a groundskeeper named Walter Schubert was running turf for a country club outside Ames, Iowa. His purchase records, the kind of thing nobody thinks to keep, but somebody in that clubhouse did, show he was buying premium seed blends by the pound, and Clover was priced right alongside the bluegrass. Not as filler, as a feature. Seed houses like O.M. Scott & Sons sold Clover seed on purpose because it made lawns thicker and greener without a drop of fertilizer. That's not my opinion. That's what's printed in the old seed catalogs. Then 2,4-D hit the market. First selective broadleaf herbicide ever sold to a homeowner, out of wartime plant hormone research, in American garages by 1946. Here's the problem nobody at those chemical companies wanted to admit. 2,4-D kills broadleaf plants and leaves grass standing. Clover is a broadleaf legume, not a grass. So the miracle spray couldn't tell the difference between a dandelion and the exact plant premium lawns were built around. It killed both. And you cannot sell a one-shot miracle lawn treatment if the best lawns in the country are full of a plant your product destroys. So the plant had to go. Not because it hurt anything, because it was in the way of a product line. Here's what that cost you. Clover was pulling 1 to 3 pounds of free nitrogen into every 1,000 square feet of lawn, every single year, with no invoice attached. The day marketing turned it into a weed, that free nitrogen vanished, and homeowners got strapped onto a treadmill that's still running today. Buy fertilizer to feed the grass. Buy herbicide to kill the plant that used to feed it for nothing. Repeat, every season, $200 to $300 a year for a job one plant used to do on its own. So let's name it plainly. White clover. Trifolium repens. Dutch white clover if you want the full tag. There's a modern low-growing strain called micro clover I'm going to get into because that one changes the whole conversation. But the root of it, pun intended, is white clover. The same plant a groundskeeper named Daniel Yoder, an Amish farmer working turf contracts in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, was still seeding into estate lawns into the 1950s because that's how his father taught him a lawn was supposed to be built. Charged extra for it. On purpose. Now here's where the biology gets interesting, because this is the part the industry could rebrand but could never actually switch off. Clover is a legume. Legumes run a partnership grass simply cannot. Down on the roots, clover teams up with a bacteria called rhizobia. The roots grow small, swollen nodules, and inside those nodules the bacteria pull nitrogen straight out of the air. The atmosphere around you is roughly 78% nitrogen gas. Grass can't touch a molecule of it. That's exactly why you keep buying bags of fertilizer. Nitrogen has to be converted into a form roots can actually absorb. The rhizobia in a clover root do that conversion for free. They turn useless atmospheric nitrogen into ammonium, plant-available nitrogen, the exact form your turf has been starving for. And here's the part that should bother you a little. Clover doesn't hoard it. As those roots work, and as old root tissue dies back and breaks down, the fixed nitrogen leaks straight into the surrounding soil, right into the root zone where your grass is reaching for it. The clover is fertilizing everything around it, for free, around the clock, all season. Let's put a real number on it. Researchers at Cornell measured white clover stands fixing somewhere between 50 and 150 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. Scale that to a residential lawn, and you're looking at roughly 1 to 3 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, dropped into your soil, no wallet involved. A standard synthetic program runs 3 to 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet across a season, split into 4 or 5 paid applications. Clover is quietly handing you a meaningful chunk of that whole program before you've spent a dime. You can ban a word. You can run an ad campaign. You can print a plant on a weed list right there on the herbicide label. You cannot ban a bacterium. The rhizobia never read the memo. Wrong is what most people have been told about this plant for 70 years. And that's exactly why that strip in my own yard outperformed the section I was still feeding. 2 reasons, and they both come straight out of how clover actually works. First, nitrogen delivery. Synthetic fertilizer gives you a flush. Grass greens up hard for 2 weeks, fades, and you're chasing it again with the next bag. Flush and fade, and most homeowners think that roller coaster is just how lawns are supposed to behave. Clover doesn't do flush and fade. It trickles. A steady, low, constant feed, day after day, with no spike and no crash. That strip never slumped. It just sat there green, while the fed section peaked and sagged, depending on how recently I'd thrown fertilizer down. Second, water. And this one matters even more once real heat shows up. Clover drives a deep taproot. Even a solid stand of grass lives mostly in the top few inches of soil. Clover reaches past that, into moisture the grass roots can't touch. So when the top layer of soil baked out in August, the clover kept pulling water from below, stayed green, and kept the soil around it a little cooler and shaded. That strip held its color through the worst of the month, while the fed section, with all its expensive nitrogen, went pale between waterings. There's more underneath that. A low clover canopy shades bare soil, and bare sunny soil is exactly where crabgrass and other weed seeds sit waiting to germinate, shaded out, and you choke a lot of those weeds before they start. Let the flowers open, and you're feeding every pollinator that comes through. And the entire time, you've eliminated the need for synthetic nitrogen on that section of turf. A lawn that feeds itself, waters itself deeper, and crowds out its own weeds is a lawn that stops buying product. And a lawn that stops buying product was never a lawn anybody in that industry had a reason to sell you. Now, some of you are already sitting there thinking, Danny, I know clover. My neighbor's got it. It's clumpy, it flowers everywhere, it looks like a mess. I hear you. For old-fashioned tall white clover, you're not entirely wrong. But that's not the only version anymore. And this is the part most people never got told. Micro clover is white clover selected over generations for a smaller leaf and a lower, tighter growth habit. Under regular mowing, it shrinks its leaf size and weaves down between the grass blades instead of sitting on top in clumps. From standing height, you genuinely cannot tell it's there. It just reads as a thick, uniform, deep green lawn. Same nitrogen-fixing engine, same rhizobia, same free fertilizer. It just disappears into the turf instead of fighting it. And the flowering, the other big objection? You control that with the mower. Clover flowers on a stem that rises above the leaf. Keep a regular mowing schedule, and you clip those stems off before they ever open. No blooms, no bees if that's not what you want. Let it grow tall, and it'll flower. Mow it on schedule, and it won't. You're in charge. The ratio matters too. You are not planting a clover field. You're seeding roughly 5 to 10% clover by seed weight into a grass lawn. A little goes a long way because every single plant is fixing nitrogen for the grass around it. Push it heavier than that, and it starts to look like clover instead of a supporting player. Stay in that 5 to 10 range, and the grass stays the star, while clover does the feeding from underneath, and it renews itself. Let a few flowers go to seed at season's end, and it reseeds any thin spots on its own. Unlike a bag of fertilizer that's gone the moment you spread it, this is a system that repairs itself, year after year, with no reorder. It doesn't care what grass you're running either. Researchers at Penn State and NC State have both tracked clover performing the same way across cool season lawns, your bluegrasses, your fescues, and warm season turf like Bermuda and zoysia. A groundskeeper named Gene Vogt, running commercial properties around Cedar Rapids, Iowa, told me the rhizobia don't care what climate zone you're in. They're doing the same chemistry in the root zone, whether it's bluegrass in Ohio or Bermuda in Dallas. So when somebody tells you they already know all about clover, ask if they've ever heard the words microclover. Most haven't. That's not an accident. Even after clover crept back into the conversation as some vague, eco-friendly lawn idea, the version that actually solves every objection, the small leaf, the no-clump habit, the mower-controlled flowering, the exact seed ratio, stayed buried. Because nobody makes $1 off a lawn that quietly feeds itself and never needs another bag of anything. All right, the why, laid out plain. 2. 4D is a selective broadleaf herbicide. It kills broadleaf plants and leaves the grass blade standing. Clover is a broadleaf legume, not a grass. The chemistry is brutally simple. 2. 4D cannot spare clover. Never could. Spray it and clover dies right alongside the dandelions. Put yourself in the shoes of the people selling that spray after the war. They had a product promising a flawless one-shot lawn, but the best lawns in the country still had clover seeded right into them on purpose. You can't sell a miracle weed killer that kills the centerpiece of the premium seed mix. So the fix wasn't the spray. The fix was reclassifying the plant. Clover went from a mark of quality to a weed in the public mind almost overnight. That's not agronomy. That's marketing. The biology never changed, only the label did. And look what that decision built. A clover-free lawn can't make its own nitrogen anymore, so now you buy it. 3 to 4 pounds per 1,000 square feet, every season, in a bag. And because clover seed is still sitting dormant in the soil wanting to come back, now you buy the herbicide to keep killing it. 2 recurring purchases, created by removing one plant that used to do both jobs for nothing. I'll be straight with you. There's a real argument on the other side, and I'm not going to pretend there isn't. Clover blooms draw honeybees, so if you're walking the yard barefoot, keep it mowed. It won't give you that single-species monoculture stripe the post-war magazines sold as a status symbol, and plenty of people genuinely want that exact look. Fair enough. But understand what that look has cost you. Decades of buying nitrogen, and decades of buying weed control to keep replacing one plant that used to hand you both for free. Now here's the part the hook promised. The number that decides whether any of this actually works. Timing. You can buy the right seed, rake it in perfect, and still get nothing if the soil temperature is wrong. Overseed white clover or microclover once your soil is steadily at or above 55 degrees and climbing toward 60. Measured 2 inches deep with an actual soil probe, not guessed off a calendar page. Below 55, that seed just sits there and rots. Past the mid-80s in deep summer heat, it struggles to establish. 2 windows a year, early spring once the nights stop freezing, or early fall as the heat breaks. Trust me on this one. Get a soil probe and read the dirt, not the date on the wall. For a pure clover stand, you're putting down 2 to 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Overseeding into existing turf, the way I did in that back strip, 1/4 to 1/2 pound per 1,000 is plenty. Buy seed that's already rhizobium inoculated. That coating is what carries the bacteria. Without it, there's no nodules, no nitrogen fixation, and you've just got a pretty plant doing nothing. Scratch or rake the surface first for real seed-to-soil contact, and keep that top inch of soil moist through the 7 to 14-day germination window. Don't let it dry out, and don't drown it either. Here's the takeaway. Clover was the groundskeeper's free nitrogen engine for 50 years, until a post-war spray that couldn't spare it got the plant rebranded as an enemy. And the bacteria on its roots never once stopped working, the whole time, for anyone who knew enough to leave it alone. Now you know how to put a self-feeding lawn back together, and you can start the second your soil hits 55 degrees, spring or fall. This is the same kind of buried knowledge as pre-emergent timing, which the calendar gets wrong every single year. There's a natural window a researcher at Iowa State proved out, and I'll walk you through that one in another video. Go check your soil. You'll see what I mean. I'll see you in the next one.